Let's talk about LGBT books. My relationship with these books was a difficult one. It was a difficult relationship because when I discovered that, a lot of them exist, my level of English wasn't very good. And unfortunately, just a few of them were translated. Today, I want to talk about two books. One of them is my favorite LGBT book, and the second one is unfortunately my least favorite LGBT book. When I was just 15, I was trying to find as many LGBT books as I could, but unfortunately not many of them were on the market as they are now. So I'm very happy about children this day that get the chance to find so many LGBT books and have them translated in their own language. I had to learn to read in English, and it was pretty difficult when I was 14, 15, when my level of English wasn't very good. I mean, it was okay, but just to get around and to have small chit chats, discussions, but not to read a book. But this is how I got to be able to read difficult books in English today and to have such a good level of English. I know I still have to learn, but it helped me a lot. My favorite LGBT book is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. I first read this book in my native language when it first came out. Fortunately, in 2015, this book was translated in my language, and I think the reason for that was because it wasn't very explicit and it was more of a self-discovery book that had, two young boys than a very explicit book, which, for example, could be heated rivalry nowadays. This book was like a journey for me, a journey because while Aristotle was self-discovering himself, I was self-discovering myself as well, and I found myself a lot in Aristotle. And why is that? I think that when you don't have many people who would understand what you're going through, movies or books, and I would say especially books because you spend more time reading a book than you would spend while watching a movie, getting to know the character and what they're going through. And in my case, that was a short journey because I wasn't able to stop reading this book. It took me 2 days, I think. To me, this is the most sincere book that I ever read, and I love that it's written in first perspective. My favorite books are the ones which are written from first perspective. I get to put myself in the main character's shoes more than I would if it would be written in third perspective, in third person perspective. And when a book is written in first person perspective, it gives you the chance to be closer if you find yourself in that character more than, it would give you a third person perspective book the chance. Aristotle is a reader. He loves to read, he loves to write, he loves to swim. These three things were also something that I used to do when I was younger as well, and I still do love to do that. And he meets Dante at the public pool. He meets Dante, and from that first meet, they get to be best friends, or so he thinks. He thinks that they're best friends because this is his first same-sex experience. And it's a bit difficult for him, or a bit more difficult for him, to understand what's going on to him and to his body. This happens in the 1980s, and as you know, it was much more difficult to be a gay person in that period of time. While reading the pages of this book and these chapters, which were very short, and I think that worked very well with the book, the fact that the chapters weren't long. I think most of them had like 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 pages, but not longer. And that worked because it didn't give you the space to wonder what's going on next. You were actually finding out what's happening next. You were left with no questions. And I love the fact that It was so sincere and so honest. Everything was so honest, and every word that was put on paper, you could actually see that the writer felt and went through those things. This book, Aristotle and Dante Discovered the Secrets of the Universe, is more of a self-autobiography that Benjamin, the writer, wrote about himself. Of course, the characters are changed. Of course, that some things didn't happen, but mainly he went through a similar situation, through a similar experience. And I think that is what made this book so honest and so easy to read and so loved by many in such a short period of time. I'm glad that they give this book the chance to become a movie. I know that the rights were sold just after the book appeared, and I was so excited. There's going to be a movie, but it took so many years to have the movie. I think it came out in 2021 or 2022, and unfortunately the movie, it wasn't a bad movie. I mean, it was an okay movie. I think that the budget wasn't, very big, but it didn't get to the point where it would be able to be equal to how good the book was. It was a good movie, but it didn't make me feel what the book made me feel. And even though I liked the movie very much, let's say that I had imagined the characters very different from how they were portrayed in the movie. I don't know exactly if the writer was involved when the movie was being filmed and, in the casting. If he did, then maybe my imagination went a bit too far. If he didn't, then I understand that he wasn't, because the movie could have been a bit better. However, it was a good movie. You should give it a chance, and you should most definitely give Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe a chance. This is in top 10 my favorite books. It's a 5 out of 5 stars, and every time I have the chance and read a chapter from this book, I go back to the time when I was 15 and when I was self-discovering myself, and that's what I loved and I still love about this book. In comparison, the other LGBT book that I'm going to discuss about didn't make me feel what Aristotle and Dante did. I had very high expectations for this one, and I read this book only once in English, and unfortunately the relationship I had with this book wasn't very positive. You might not agree, but Call Me By Your Name is not on my top list of LGBT books, and I usually do not recommend it. Don't get me wrong, I loved the movie. I think the movie is one of the best LGBT portrayals in cinema history, and I will always go back to that movie and feel nostalgic and feel love and feel inspired and feel everything that I want to feel when I feel, let's say, lonely or when I feel a bit sad. The book unfortunately didn't do that for me, and I first read the book and then watched the movie, and while reading this book I mostly felt like I was reading an essay. Like I was reading an essay about how other people perceive you, how other people act, how you should act. If I can compare it to a book, I think that the best comparison would be The Scarlet Letter. Same case with Scarlet Letter. I loved the subject and I was very excited to read it, but I was so boomed by how boring the book was and difficult. I'm sorry, but The Scarlet Letter is one of the worst books I've ever read. And I wouldn't say that this is one of the worst books I've ever read. I won't be that bad. But I will say that this is one of the worst experiences I had with an LGBT book. Especially because I had high expectations. Maybe if I wouldn't have had them, I wouldn't have been so disappointed, because that's what I felt, disappointment. It took me a lot of time to read it, and unfortunately, after maybe 2 months, I think it took me 2 months to read it, When I finished it, I was as disappointed as I was when I started it and when I was reading it. Now, let's discuss sequels. Both of the books have a sequel. We have Aristotle and Dante dive into the waters of the earth, of the word, and I tried to read and finish this book twice. Unfortunately, both times I stopped at 137. And that was because it didn't make me feel what the first book made me feel, even though, it's not many years after or something like that. It just takes somewhere from the place the first book was left. But I don't know exactly what happened. Maybe I wasn't ready at that time to give it a chance, to finish it. Please tell me that this is a good book after all, that I should give it another chance. I want to give it another chance, but I just need a little bit of push. The sequel of Call Me By Your Name is called Find Me. And to be honest, I have no idea why this book is called a sequel, because it has almost nothing to do with the first book. And this one was easier to finish. It's also a pretty short book, but I'm just trying to check because I don't really remember. The third part... Okay, so the third part has around 50 pages out of 250 something pages. That was the only part that happened between Elio and Oliver from Call Me By Your Name. The first good part of the book was about Elio's father, and I don't want to say something bad about this book, but it was that bad. It was that bad that even now I'm wondering what happened. Why was this book written? Why is this considered a sequel to Call Me By Your Name? And why the first part of the book, which is the main part of the book, exists and was written? I was very disappointed about this one, and I'm not ashamed to say that this was a 1 star for me. It was a 1 star because it has nothing to do with the first book. The writing style is different. I mean, it's not bad. The book is written in a very beautiful way. But there's this big but that I just didn't like it. And it was so expensive because I got it hardcover when it first aired. Now you let me know. Have you read Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe? Have you read the sequels? What did you think about them? And have you read Call Me By Your Name and the sequels? And if so, what's your opinion about them? Hit a like, subscribe, and comment for more content.